Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chris Before Coffee. The title of today's show is something like, "And now that's all we've got time for." It's one of the most popular phrases you hear in rolling news, and we want to look at the ethics of mainstream media and the way they portray the truth. Yesterday, I released the full audio recording of Peter Todd's interview with the BBC Click programme that was first broadcast on the 20th of September. For those of you joining us from outside of the UK, I'm afraid that you're not able to, at least legally, see the full version of the programme. You're only able to see this shortened version, which just includes the segment with Amir, Taaki and Peter Todd. The whole piece was very, very edited down. The conversation that we had with Jen here on the right and Simon here, who's the editor of BBC Click here on the far right of the frame, was a very long and very dense conversation in which a lot of the questions that they asked in the first 10 minutes, I think the footage they used of Peter in the final cut was only from the first 10 minutes. A lot of the questions they were asking got answered, but not until 30 to 40 minutes into the conversation. Now, we've gone to great lengths. This has taken many hours to do. This is a transcript of the whole thing that Sumitra and I have been working on. Sumitra, as we speak, is going to put this as an overlay on the closed captions on the video, and he's working very hard on that. You can see the full conversation here. I put timestamps in. In fact, I'm going to just fix that right now. There we go. And you can see that clearly the team at the BBC have already come into the room with an agenda. They already knew what they needed to take away with them. It was just a hit job. They just needed to come in and get out. And the quotes that they needed were quotes like, well, you know, what if ISIS could fund a nuclear weapon using Bitcoin? Now, in philosophy, that is called begging the question. In other words, the entire premise of your question is flawed. A, where did ISIS get their money from in the first place? I think you'll find this is a picture on John McCain's official Twitter account from over a year ago, and he stood next to Abu Mosa. This was another thing that was brought up in the conversation which never made it to the final cut. And the problem with ethical, in philosophy with ethics, the problem with begging the question is it can lead to allegations of intellectual dishonesty. Now, the response that I got from the BBC when I told them that I was going to publish this was that, well, actually, we did you guys a favour, because they did say, you know, Amir and Peter did say some pretty extreme things. The response to that would be only because you framed them, only because you put them into a particular, you know, discourse that made them say the things that they said. And it wasn't just Bitcoiners that were, you know, strongly disagreeing with the sort of tabloid style journalism of BBC Click. We also have Stephen Rockman here, who said to me earlier on Twitter today that he just thinks that Bitcoin is a passing fad. Now, he said after he watched BBC Click, good grief, BBC Click, a program devoid of any journalistic expertise whose purpose audience are unclear, has 2.4 million followers. And this is the problem. 2.5 million people have now been lied to and misled by a show that is supposed to be a light entertainment broadcast to do with technology, and it's not designed to go into complex issues like ethics. This is one of the most popular areas of philosophy. It dominated most of the latter half of the 20th century, and trying to cram that into 3 minutes just isn't on. So joining me today, I have a new guest today. I have Ian from Cointelegraph. You're muted. We go.
Hi everybody. Sorry about that.
And it's actually a full line. We also have Julia joining us from Toronto.
Hi.
Hello. You've got like a grey screen. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And Julia, I should mention that Julia and I were both in attendance when that interview was being conducted. And I actually, when I was there, a lot of people were kind of looking at each other. I think it was clear to at least some of us what the BBC were up to. And I even made a prediction in the blockchain as well.
Yeah, I was in the hallway with Chris Odom, and he was like, "What the fuck are you guys doing? You guys shouldn't even be doing this. They're gonna spin it." I'm like, "Yep."
Yeah. And also joining us is Drac. Are you there, Drac? Or maybe just along for the ride. And we have some regular guests as well. We have Jamie Nelson from Wisconsin.
Howdy, everybody.
Howdy. And we have Theo from Frankfurt.
Hello.
Hello. And lastly, but not leastly, Pie Rebel. Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Good, good. Right, well, I want to start with you, Ian, because you covered this and you very kindly linked to my article on my blog, which I never promote because I'm embarrassed about it, about concision in the media. And so tell us your take on this. What made you choose to give this such prominence?
I'm sorry, which article are you referring to that I wrote?
It was actually one by, I think it was Diana.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's great. Well, I think the problem is that, like you said, we don't have time for this or whatever. They like to cut things off, but in today's world, we have the internet. There could have been, you see, like Jon Stewart will start an interview on Daily Show and let it finish online. They could have had opportunity to give a more full story, even if not in the 3 minutes. Then give their audience an option of how to find the rest of the story, I guess.
And it was interesting that this wasn't covered by other Bitcoin magazines. Obviously, it featured quite heavily on Reddit, which is why I chose to release the full audio, because so many people were like, well, just release the damn thing. It's your footage. But I was surprised that other people didn't pick up on it, because the allegation was that I heard on social media was that, look, you've got two things going on here. One, you've got sensationalist tabloid-style journalism and slightly sort of abuse of power on the BBC's part. But then you've also got Amir Taaki, who is, why the hell is he sending this dodgy-looking dossier, which doesn't even look credible, to the BBC in the first place and inviting them along? Like, what did he expect? So there's also this allegation that the PR wasn't handled very well.
Well, I mean, I don't know, Amir, so I wouldn't want to speak for him, but perhaps there's any publicity is good publicity, especially when you're talking about something like Dark Wallet. So maybe something like that is at work here.
Yeah, I think, well, let's take a look at the dodgy dossier. Links in the description below. I'll tidy those up after the show. It's just that I don't always know where we're going to go in the conversation. So this is the dodgy looking dossier, which looks like someone's just copy pasted it from another document. That's why you get this grey background. It looks like it's been copied from someone's composed it in another, probably in a browser, probably in some kind of blog situation. They've copied and pasted it into a PDF. That's why you get that grey background behind it. And you've got this kind of weird bolding of certain words. Oh no, wait, that looks like it's been OCR'd. Nick, does that look like that's been OCR'd to you?
Yeah, maybe it could have been. I don't know.
Look at the way it's selecting the text.
I'm pulling up the file right now because I don't have it open on mine.
See, this is what gives me suspicion. Dark Wallet is a new Bitcoin. This is allegedly the ISIS document, or the document from ISIS sympathizers published this PDF back in, I think it was July. Dark Wallet is a new Bitcoin wallet designed to completely hide the activities of its users. That to me sounds like PR. That doesn't sound like someone just going, yeah, we found this thing called Dark Wallet and apparently it lets you, hide online payments. That looks like something straight out of a sales pitch.
You should put that sentence into Google and see if it pops up.
I have actually. I didn't get anything, but yeah, you're right. That's I do encourage people to see if we can crowdsource this and find out if we can find a smoking gun here, because straight away, Pandodaily, Michael Carney was just like, this is bogus. Like, this is clearly a fake document. It doesn't have a shred. It's like it's on a WordPress website. It's not even got its own domain. We're dealing with a very well-funded group of militants who could easily have afforded to put it somewhere else. And also, if you're on, this is the actual WordPress site here. I guess I can just go take that out. And the problem with publishing to WordPress is that they're keeping a lot of information from your IP address and all that kind of thing server side. So if you were going to publish something like this, it probably wouldn't be a good idea to register with a third party who would be keeping lots and lots of metadata about you. So this is their latest post. Can't tell when the date of this is, or how recent. 20th of August. Okay, so it's still being kept up to date. So maybe it was something that was leaked to them. But what's your take on this anyway, Nick? Because we haven't heard from you much recently.
Yeah, I've been busy. I think it's kind of bogus. I mean, anybody could be an IS supporter, right? Like, anybody can come along and be like, you know what, I kind of support this. Maybe I'm not going to get involved on the ground, but I'm going to, help spread information. That's not really anything that I would even, unless they're like explicitly connected with them. It could be anybody, you know what I mean? And it does kind of seem a little weird that they have this WordPress site and they're just rolling us out on here. I mean, they do talk about how to hide yourself basically on the internet, but it isn't anything that seems too serious. How to use Tor, where to get tails, you know what I mean? How to encrypt your email with PGP and things like that. Like, these are just anything anybody could have Googled anyways. It's just put in a nice wrapping of terrorist sympathizers.
And Julia, do you want to say a little bit more about what you felt at the time? I mean, are you surprised by this? Because you've actually seen the full episode, which not many people here have.
I don't know. It was okay. I thought that it could have been worse. I felt like Amir had a direct contact to Jen, but you have to remember she probably doesn't make the last call. And if she's a liberal, which it seems like she was, then it doesn't matter if she's your friend or not. She's going to push an agenda that is close to her heart. But yeah, I can't really speak for their friendship. And I think Amir wants to stir the pot, and the publicity, no, he seems happy with it. So it creates, it feeds the dialogue that already exists around Dark Wallet. This kind of reactionary, knee-jerk public image, right? So people are going to be very reactionary to the privacy aspects that Bitcoin presents, and I don't know, maybe we should feed the fire because it's unavoidable anyway, so why not have fun?
That's interesting. So be like les enfants terribles and just go in and just kick some things over. Do you think that could be a good strategy?
That's like their middle name, isn't it?
That's an interesting perspective. Let's explore that a little bit more. So one of the biggest problems we've got, I would conjecture, is apathy. And what you could be saying here is that we're stirring the pot to wake people up. Is that right?
I mean, because they presented it in such a black and white light, maybe that's better because people can digest gray areas, especially people who watch BBC Click. So, but they're also not going to do anything about it. So maybe it's best that it's in their minds in some form or another, and maybe it'll kind of form a different opinion down the road. Maybe when they have a run-in with their own issues of privacy, they'll remember this. Or maybe not, but...
Okay, so this could be a way of kickstarting a public debate, and by making it very polarized and juxtaposing the dark wallet developers alongside the other technologists they featured, which is Bellingcat, which is a citizen journalism thing. You think that could galvanize a debate?
Well, I don't the debate is there, but I think these people need to realize that this can't be stopped and it's already here. How is there a debate when, how would you ban this? How would you stop it? There's no debate. It's either freedom and free speech or nothing. And where's the debate in that? That's just action. You either have it or you don't. You submit or you don't. So I don't know. I don't know where they'll debate something. They'll find something to debate, but I mean it's kind of arbitrary at this point.
How many guns they should point at you for using this software?
Well, let's give a citation. So at about 30 minutes into the conversation, I ask Amir, I want to hear you talk, because yesterday you said it was intellectually dishonest. He was referring to me. Can you say right now, is there version 1 of Dark Wallet that allows full anonymity and not pseudonymity, not a chain of numbers? Amir says you can use SX for anonymity. You have stealth addresses. And what he's referring to, which I was not aware of at the time, was the fact that you can actually create a stealth address from the command line. I mean, it's obvious now that I've been told. I mean, it makes sense, but I wasn't conscious of this at the time. So in fact, they're not forging new technology. It's not like they've just walked along in the woods, rubbed two sticks together and invented fire. Someone else already invented fire.
Yeah, it's just an easier tool, isn't it?
Yeah, all they're trying to do is bring it to the masses.
Yeah, I mean, there's always other alt currencies that do enable anonymous transactions, the crypto note ones, Darkcoin, or whatever, So Dark Wallet just makes it a little bit easier. But something I wanted to bring up was that all these stealth technologies or whatever are just a direct result of the government's own snooping. Like, everyone was pretty much, not everyone, but most people ignored the idea of privacy. There's PGP for the people that really wanted it. But it wasn't until the Edward Snowden revelations came out and he got on stage at the South by Southwest conference and begged the tech community to make privacy-minded software that's easy to use. And now after that we see, I mean, Dark Wallet I think was maybe announced before that, but it's still the desire for all this privacy stuff and the mainstream beyond just like very small pockets really grew out of the NSA revelations, I believe.
I think usability is key here, real big key, and even with Bitcoin, we can't underestimate the efforts of some of the people we may dislike in this space, because they are bringing usability to the mainstream. So on the privacy front, we need to do the same, because people are used to quick fixes and people are used to being able to click 1 or 2 buttons and be able to interact with some sort of service or app, and we need to do that. We need to accomplish that with the tools that we find important, because otherwise people won't use them. And I'm not technical. I've been really learning a lot, and in the past few days, I've been doing the offline transactions and cold wallet stuff and Armory, and it's just little things always come up. The actual thing isn't difficult, but something will always come up to screw it up. And people without technical knowledge will usually just give up. Not everybody's willing to hunker down and call someone and get them to help you. So if we really want privacy, we need to make these tools available, easy to find, easy to follow, easy to use. Otherwise, we're kidding ourselves.
Very good.
Absolutely.
That was very well said. So this is actually the BBC Horizon broadcast, where they did a very good job of representing both sides of the debate. And in fact, they couched it from the point of view of, we've got this extremism of snooping from the government. And they even featured Bruce Schneier, who's a cryptographer and a commentator of this industry. And that's why I claim that the whole line of Jen's questioning in the interview was a complete non sequitur and begged the question. The point wasn't, as Peter made clear over and over again throughout the whole interview, this isn't a question about whether or not you give this to extremists. I mean, look, she's trying to bait him here. How important is liberty to you? The reason they do that, journalists do that, is to try and get you to repeat that word back. You should never do that. This is the reason why we have politicians that never answer questions on news. That's why they always dodge the question, because they're briefed.
Have you stopped beating your wife?
Say again?
Have you stopped beating your wife?
Right. Yes, exactly. You're leading the question and you're trying
It's all about hammers. It's about who controls the hammers. And if you let terrorists have access to hammers, and they might build something. So you have to put the hammers in an enclosed box that is a highly regulated box. Otherwise, terrorists might get hammers.
I think that the biggest risk here, though, everyone, is that we end up becoming as bad as ISIS by reneging on our Western democratic values, because most of the first 10 minutes of the interview with Peter, he was giving them a lecture in moderate Western democracy. It had nothing to do with extremism, but because they already had a quote from another journalist at the end of the segment that labeled them as extreme libertarians, they needed to leave with that soundbite. They couldn't rush and run with a piece that doesn't have them saying something extreme. That's why they kept putting these counterfactuals about what would happen if they got a nuclear weapon and it was funded with Bitcoin. Never mind that there have been nuclear weapons already, and in fact it was a Western democracy that first used it and invented it. That was completely ignored, as was where ISIS got the funding from originally. If you listen all the way through to the end, Jen ends up agreeing, and Simon seems to as well. Eventually, once they've heard all sides of the debate, especially when Eric comes into it at the end, one of the other developers, let me just do a search for Eric, is he actually says, look, whatever happened to cash? Why is cash suddenly illegal? And that's what's really happened with these digital online payments, is that you don't have any privacy anymore, but that's what cash. So actually all we're doing is maintaining the status quo. It is, in fact, despite Amir's rhetoric and his passion and charisma, the fact is it's just a moderate project to maintain the status quo.
I have a question. Since you said you were there, did she seem to understand Bitcoin technology in general?
And that's what annoys me. Yes, she did. She did understand it.
Yeah, if she didn't understand, you could see where she was coming from. Like, she just thinks it's like PayPal. Why can't you just stop them and not ruin the whole thing? But if she understood, then I don't know why she would continue to hammer that question.
Yeah, because she needed a soundbite, you see. They'd probably already done the interview with the Bellingcat team. They'd probably already done the interview with, I think his name is Jamie, who is the journalist who, by the way, has a book out, and he mentioned the book, So they already had him on the show probably saying these are libertarian extremists, and if they're not careful, they're going to lose favor with public opinion and all this kind of thing. So it's almost like Jen is, like we've already said, let's make sure I digest this properly. So it could have been worse. They had more extreme material that they could have run with. So in a way, they kind of done Dark Wallet a bit of a favor by toning it down and not using the worst of the commentary. But then on the other hand, the whole way in which it was framed, particularly where I was also doing the same job that Bellingcat did, and ironically, I've now done to the BBC the very same thing that Bellingcat is doing. So they juxtaposed us two. But now I've done that to you, BBC. I've done a fact-finding mission. I've exposed the whole interview so that everyone can make a decision. Because let's face it, the world doesn't stop after a 3-minute segment, right? Like, the conversation has to keep going. And I think the problem is that this kind of concision, where you cut things down into tiny little bite-sized chunks, is it stupefies people. Nobody left that BBC Click interview, I would say, wanting to learn more about it. It's just all about entertainment, and I'm going to give you the information from here, and then you just accept that. Whereas what we try to do with this show is we actually assume that you are a journalist and you are on the front line. And we put links down below in the description. We regularly have audience members on the show to engage with the discussion. And I want to see more of this participatory journalism within the mainstream itself, because otherwise they're just abusing their position. You've got 2.5 million people that have just been lied to, and that was an abuse of power.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Well said. I just wanted to put something there. Everyone was quiet after your comments.
It often happens. It often happens in the show. Theo, go on, Theo. No, you're muted.
No. Hi. Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that on the first show, about the whole entertainment thing, and I think that's also part of it. I mean, in a way, I mean, she's just doing her job. She was sent out to get a certain piece, and she did it. And she was paid a certain amount per hour, or however you're paid.
Fascist thinking.
No, I don't agree with it. I'm just saying.
She's just following orders.
No, exactly, and that's exactly what she did. I didn't say it's good. I'm just saying that's exactly what she did. You know, and that's why she didn't do any extra work by trying to offer us more of the story or anything like that. You know, she's just following orders, and she just did it, and it's for entertainment, and it's not about journalism or I don't know, whatever their show is usually about, like learning about technology and all that kind of crap.
Right, it's not about journalism. That's the nail on the head there.
But there is a fair there is a fair point, is that like the reason she came to do the interview in the first place was because Amir specifically wrote to her and said, "Hey, look, you know, Dark Wallet's been mentioned on this this document. Come and talk to me about, you know, about ISIS and about Dark Wallet and everything." So he did kind of invite it. It's not that she kind of took an, you know, thought, "Oh, here's an easy kill," you know. And I think, to be honest with you, to be fair, I mean, I spoke with Jen quite a bit at the Ethereum meetup, and you know, she really likes Amir. She really respects him. And this was like, you know, she was there at the Ethereum meetup. She wasn't there as a journalist. She just came, you know. And yeah, I'd be very careful about demonizing Jen too much. You know, I mean, yes, clearly the BBC had an angle, and you know, clearly her editor is in control, you know, above her. But you know, she really does like Amir, and she really likes what he's doing. You know, for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to demonize Jen either, and I did say yesterday on Twitter that people should stop. Apparently she's feeling harassed because so many people were like tweeting her, and that wasn't because of me, just for the record. That was because on the original Reddit post, someone actually said, "Well, who are these people? Who are the people who did this, and where's their Twitter account?" Someone posted back, and then there was like an organized thing to like start badgering them, and then also she ended up being included on other, you know, discussions. But at the end of the day, she is a grown-up. She's clearly a very competent and savvy journalist. She is the one with the power here because she's the one with 2.5 million viewers. We're just a small-time, you know, bunch of bloggers and YouTubers. So, you know, we to some extent we have to kind of stick up. I'm not against. I'm sure Amir is happy with it, and I love that Julia's brought that other perspective, that this should galvanise a much-needed debate, and it should at least wake people up. It's just that kind of tabloid-style representation where you had Spencer Kelly, it was like doom, doom, terror, terror, fear, fear. It was the problem is with the fear motive is fear motivates rumour, fear motivates misinformation. And that was my problem. And what particularly...
The intro was so funny, wasn't it? So funny. And guys, remember, if anybody doesn't find that intro funny, you can't reach them anyways. The people that see that intro, they're like, "Oh, what are we about to watch? What are we signed up for?" And then they'll watch it with, you know, under a microscope. They're not going to be, you know, zombifying in the television. They're going to be watching it alert and seeing how they're spinning the story, because that intro, it completely betrays them, doesn't it? So I mean, like,
yeah,
in a way,
I see what you mean.
Idiots.
I see what you mean.
When I first heard about Dark Wallet, it was because of Cody Wilson's 3D guns. That was getting a lot of attention on the internet, and then he partnered with Amir to do the Dark Wallet project. So it seemed pretty obvious that they were out to poke the bear, so to speak, and seek attention, and that was kind of the motive behind the whole thing to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. And welcome, Jamie. Thanks as well. We've been ignoring you there. I just want to get your opinion on this. Like, am I being paranoid here, or this is Bellingcat, who do the same kind of job as I do, except they use a service called checkdesk.org, which is a centralized timestamping server for journalists, so that they can go ahead and fact check media that appears on the internet in breaking stories. And that's the impetus for this, is that we have a lot of misinformation on the internet now. Information is coming at you thick and fast, and it is prime real estate for propagandists and people that want to mislead the narrative. So up pops Bellingcat. I've been doing something similar to Bellingcat, but I've been using the Bitcoin blockchain, which is decentralized, open source, I believe Checkdesk is open source as well. It just it relies on you running it from a central server. And what was interesting to me, I can't obviously show, for copyright reasons, I can't show the full piece, but I can show you what they talked about. This was the article that they brought up. Last week, Bellingcat published a piece by Iggy Ostanin. Images show the downed flight MH17 inside Russia, controlled by Russian troops, that linked the Buk missile launcher that appeared in photographs and videos. So a part of me is kind of thinking, like, maybe I'm just being tin hat wearing conspiratard right now, but is there an element of conspiracy here where the BBC are trying to put into what is essentially a light entertainment broadcast like BBC Click a bit of Western propaganda where we slag off Russia and we show how, look, these open source crowd-funded teams of journalists are going out and finding the real villains. By the way, it's Russia, just in case you didn't realize. And then we're going to segue into another segment that shows these, like, you know, terrorist sympathizing programmers that are leaving more places for these terrorists to hide.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Maybe they. I don't know if it's exactly if it's calculated, but I mean, maybe they watched RT and they thought, okay, we have to counter that, and we're going to do the exact opposite. Because, like, I think Amir has been on RT before, and he got to say pretty much whatever he wanted, I guess, and they do, of course, their own spin on the whole Ukraine thing, and then BBC said, okay, we have to balance that, and you know the directors or our bosses or whatever said, yeah, you know, do something, pushing things a little bit in that direction, and then maybe they did it. I mean, you know, RT has a big agenda too, and as does most media, so of course that's part of it. I mean, it's not the only thing, but I think that's one element of it we shouldn't forget.
There's a difference in media studies and information science more generally. There's a distinction between balance and symmetry. I can't find a good article on it on the internet, but I will endeavor to find one later. So symmetry is where things look exactly the same on both sides, often within media studies, regardless of how significant that voice is. So you could have a debate that features two sides. One is 1% in terms of the overall opinion of the population or the group, and the other one is 99%. But symmetry would be giving them both equal airtime, despite the fact that one is stronger than the other. Balance, on the other hand, is not the same. Balance is where you look at all the debate in the round, and you give each party proportional representation in the discourse. And that doesn't mean that people can't talk. Freedom of speech doesn't mean that you can't say what you want on other channels. It's just that when we're doing these broadcasts, like we deliberately on World Crypto Network chose to focus on news stories that come from the perspective of digital technology and the digital economy that is emerging, because we think that it's so important that you have to pretty much now look at the world within the rubric of digital technology. There's no other way of looking at it. It pretty much defines our era. It's like the Industrial Revolution or the printing press. And as a result, what you end up doing is, like what Simon, the producer of BBC Click, said to me in his response was, well, look, Chris, you know, we did a positive piece on Dark Wallet a year ago, which is also in the links below, by the way. So this time we felt that we needed to balance it. But that's not balance, that's symmetry. What you've just done is you've given a misrepresentation. You've given too much airtime to a fallacious argument, an argument that's been had well through the 20th century in ethics, this idea of, like, you know, should you do something, you know, what would be the ramifications. It was explained to you at length during that conversation that this is just moderate Western democracy we're protecting. This is just cash. Cash was always legal. Code is a form of speech. And they kept needing to reiterate that and kept needing to reiterate that. And if you go through the transcript, it's almost like Jen and Simon aren't even listening to what Peter's saying. They just keep badgering away at the same old questions.
Yeah, they're begging the question, just like you said. They already knew what sound bites they had to get, and they had to get them at all costs. And you can ask, you know, it's kind of like how the police interrogate you, you know? They ask you just in different ways, you know. Jamie, did you want to say something?
Actually, cash is illegal in some places in the United States now.
So, say more about that.
Using cash in Louisiana and some places in the United States is illegal now.
How is that illegal? I can miss that, because isn't that
it's been illegal for several years.
Isn't that a federal regulation? I don't know. If we want to get into
somehow they got around it and made the use of cash, like in the state of Louisiana, it's been illegal for since 2012, I believe.
Well, then how do I buy a Coke from a Coke machine? I got to have a phone, or I can't put quarters in there or something?
It says, Nick just put up a link in our private chat. But
that's cool. Well, I mean,
yeah,
that's really crazy.
Yeah, was it Sweden?
Oh, we're losing Nick. I'm going to tweet that out right now. So it's at Mr. Chris Ellis. I'm just going to do that this second.
But I want to bring up about her line of question was sort of, I mean, I certainly understand if you feel like your subject is avoiding a question, you want to ask it, you know, multiple times or try to get a straight answer. And I mean, it certainly seemed to me that Amir was answering her questions. Maybe she felt differently, but there comes a point where you have to let the subject's answer be their answer and move on. And she didn't seem like she was willing to do that until she got the answer that she wanted, judging by the transcript. Again, I don't know her personally, so I don't want to talk too much.
Yeah, and I want to draw attention to Peter Todd, who I'm going to introduce as the chief scientist of all things, and he's moderate on extreme Western democracy, I would say. He's very clever. He's a very, very, very smart guy. I was really impressed with him when I met him in person. But, you know, sometimes someone can be too clever for their own good. And one of the things is that when he talks, it's a very, very thick discourse that he uses, very, very thick dialogue, where there's many, many layers that you've got to peel away. In other words, he's not really front of house. Like, you wouldn't, if you were running like a media campaign, you wouldn't have him briefing the press, because the press just want a short soundbite. And one of the things he mentions here, it's quite a long argument. So you see, Jen actually admits a point that he makes, where he says, relatively speaking, ISIS is better off if they do not have Bitcoin in their territory, because that's the irony. They can get money from outside, but within the territory, they are going to hold on to power longer if they can control the economy. They can control people's ability to speak. Money as a form of speech, as the courts have ruled. And he says that as well numerous times. They can control the internet. So in fact what he's saying is, look, ISIS wouldn't even want this technology. They wouldn't want their own population using it. And then Jen says, that's an interesting point. Yeah, of course, that doesn't make the final cut. It would have taken them, what, 2 seconds to have put that point of view across, where actually as the conversation went on, Jen was getting more persuaded that they wouldn't even want it themselves. They could have, you know, like Midas Mani did, you know, showcase this of people in these kind of regions fundraising against this kind of extremism. And then he says something quite excellent, where he talks about the fact that Twitter banned ISIS, and he says, well, look, just as they can get their message to us through Twitter, we can also get their message to him. Wouldn't I rather have terrorists going on and reading about Miley Cyrus on Twitter? Like, yeah, this is a tool to go spread their message, but it's also a tool to spread our message to them. But keeping them out of that system, we're removing our avenue of influencing them, in the same way that we remove their avenue from influencing us. Well, between the two, which one has the better message? The better message is Western democracy. The average person that seems to like that as a pretty good idea. You know, with oppressive regimes, they always like to go shut down the internet. That really says something. That is brilliant. That is just a brilliant... How on earth you garner libertarian extremism from that passage, I don't know.
We also have to consider what their intention is. Like, they're using the internet to push their message, you know, with YouTube's thing, much more effective than Al Qaeda's like VHS tapes from, you know, the early 2000s. But now, I mean, I think we all agree that the document is at best highly suspect. But let's just assume for a minute that it is legit. Why would they put that out there unless it was an intentional reason to? You know, they can communicate in a non-public way, not on a WordPress, you know. So if they're putting it out in a public way, they're doing that for a reason. You know, I'm not sure what that reason is, but I'm betting that they want us to react a certain way, which would be negative dark wallet. They're not putting that out there for us to like want to help. They're not going to think that U.S. government's going to help dark wallet after that, or the UK government, or whoever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it certainly does put Bitcoin in the spotlight, and I want to just raise awareness to the fundraiser that Drac and Julia and Amir have put up on Reddit recently. We need another 3.6 Bitcoin in donation to complete the 10 Bitcoin match donations for Dark Wallet. So you can go ahead. I haven't put this in the links yet, but perhaps someone can go ahead and put this in the comment. And then you can go check this out. How much have you raised so far? Let me just see. You want to say anything about this, Drac?
Hold on. Oh yeah, here we are. Okay, so that multi-sig was used previously, so the actual amount they've raised is, I think it's now 42 Bitcoins, and we need another 43, 44, something like that.
Okay.
So by the time, assuming we get the remaining, I think it's now 2 that are 2 Bitcoins, then I'll put in 10 pledged, and then it's the remaining 30 odd, 33 or something, 32 Bitcoins.
Someone mentioned that, and you can obviously rewind the video and get the QR code from that. Someone mentioned that you could just as easily have called Dark Wallet Rainbow Wallet, and it would still do the same thing, but probably reach more people. In fact, allegedly, someone on the Reddit said that they were the developers of Darkcoin were belligerent. That was the word that he or she used to say that, when it came up with ideas for the name, they renamed Open Bazaar, obviously, from Dark Market, because again, they just felt. I just think a sizable proportion of the Bitcoin community and industry just felt like this is needlessly provocative. You are just being churlish, and you're just trying to be like this rebel, like, yeah, fuck the man, and go out there and do it. And a lot of people were like, you don't need to do this. Like,
I'll be quite honest with you. So what I've observed from the Dark Wallet people that I've seen so far is that there is a belief that by changing the name they would somehow be compromising on values or whatnot. So that's something I've heard. I have no comment to make about that. But I think regarding the name, to be quite honest with you, I don't think that's the reason why they're having difficulty raising funds. The reason that they're having difficulty raising funds is because there's no token for sale. If this was Dark Wallet Coin, with that was going to be a new crypto that was going to launch in in a couple of weeks or something, then people would be throwing hundreds of Bitcoins at it, and that's just how it is. I'm afraid that because there's no real incentive except altruism, then that's why. But Amir said he's. Hold on a second. Amir said he actually approached a couple of venture capital type angel people, and they sort of he doesn't want the project to be influenced by interests. Dark Wallet is going to be sort of a neutral wallet. It's technology, and he doesn't want there to be some sort of commercial, like some people were suggesting adding a token to it and whatnot. He doesn't want any of that. So kind of trying to keep it clean. So that's really how it is.
Mm-hmm. And once you have investors, you have obligations to those investors. Right. And like you look at Chrome, or you look at Firefox, basically any online thing that's free, it's like the opposite of private. The old saying, if you can't see the product, then you're the product. I mean, that's kind of true with the internet. And so I kind of agree with the move to. I'm not saying you were disagreeing with it, but I do agree with the move to kind of push away any investors into Dark Wallet and kind of keep it like charity.
Amir's first question, if someone offers him money, is like, "What do you want?" Because
very good, yeah.
Because basically, and he has turned down money simply because what people want in return is going to compromise the project. They want certain features, they want certain this, they want certain that, and that's not what Dark Wallet's about. So
I want to, because we don't have concision on this show, and we often have meandering thoughts, and obviously we're still working on the format of all of these broadcasts, and one of the things that we're experimenting with is timestamps in the description below, which will usually appear in the following days after the broadcast. But you can yourself put timestamps in the comments. Just put the time signature like 20:06, and that will automatically create a link to that part of the video. It's a very good feature by YouTube. Now, I want to talk about this notion that came up because Jen wasn't completely unreasonable in her line of questioning, right? So the argument that Peter comes back with is that this is a form of speech. And this has been part of our Western-style democracy for hundreds of years. However, speech itself is changing. You never used to be able to send cash to the other side of the world in the blink of an eye at near zero cost. That's new. So speech itself is changing. And I suppose if I can channel Jen right now and I can play devil's advocate, take her side of the argument, what she wants to say is something like, yeah, but we could never have predicted that speech would have got this far. And one of the points that was brought up by Daniel Barron that I've now had a chance to read fully was this guy, who apparently he's a great troll. I've been really enjoying reading him. And he was saying that you don't even need Dark Wallet because there's no such thing as Bitcoin taint. And if, you know, a lot of this is like, well, okay, so there's two things here. One is, what has speech turned into, and would you have even got to Western-style democracy had we known that you were going to get to the kind of, you know, impact and power that you can have today? Let's tackle that one first before we go into taint. Speech has turned into something new. Therefore, it needs re-examination.
They've been using that argument for guns in the United States now because in the last 15 years or so, they've really been anti-gun, and they keep saying when the founding fathers of the country did the country, or wrote the Constitution for the country, they could have never imagined these AR-15s and these guns we have now, so we have to ban these guns. And now they're using the same thing for freedom of speech. The founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, could have never imagined the internet, or they could have never imagined Bitcoin, so we have to ban all progress that humankind has made, basically, since the founding of our countries, which is just completely ridiculous to me.
Yeah, so Peter's argument was, look, this technology exists already. If we don't get this out to as many people as possible, it will end up being an oligopoly. You will end up with a few people being able to use stealth addresses. And like he says, right now you can set up stealth companies, shell companies. You can hire lawyers. You can hire lawyers to hire lawyers that can hide your money for you, as we've seen with HSBC. And Drac brought that up as well with all the cartels in Mexico and all the gangs. So it's not like, it's almost as like, let's make everyone have these loopholes.
Exactly.
And then you've got this dichotomy between one side which is motivated by fear, like what if, and then you've got this other group of people that are motivated by hope, where it's like, well, hang on, don't individuals want their freedom? And if you take this argument to its corollary and you give everyone a level playing field, in fact that was a phrase that Peter used, we need to level the playing field, then surely the people like ISIS, it's not that they don't exist, it's just that we can deal with them.
Yeah, but that's what it's. I think that you're right. It's about who has access to these tools, who is allowed to, you know, like the banks don't have a problem laundering money in some, you know, gray area way or manipulating the law and all that, but everyday people don't. Or it's what we talked about before with judicial arbitrage. You know, companies can do that, but we can't do it, or we're not really effective to do it, and we'll get caught. You know, or what was that when we were talking about debt? What did you say? If you owe the bank $5,000, that's okay. But if you owe that's your problem. But if you owe the bank $500 million, that's the bank's problem. But we as individuals, we don't have that opportunity to play those kind of games. But companies, they can do that. So they can do this, use judicial arbitrage or other methods to move funds around and etc. And they don't have a problem doing that now. The whole discussion is, what if you lower, like you said, you lower the entry level and make these tools available to everybody? Because if everybody has a shovel and a screwdriver, then it's not a special thing anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And what it boils down to is simultaneous action. Can you get a group of people to act simultaneously? That's what large organizations are very good at. That's why you get 50,000 people turning up to a sports stadium. It's because you are able to get everyone to make the same decision, to leave their house, to get on public transport, get their car, go to this stadium at the same time. That's how impact emerges. But what these companies have is they have internal communication systems. They have top-down hierarchical controls. General members of the public that may happen to agree with each other or join together as groups and feel a sense of connectedness don't necessarily have those tools, therefore can't get that simultaneous action to emerge. So I've been saying for a little while now that we could get the housing market to crash just by getting enough people in the economy to agree not to pay their rent and mortgages for 1 month in the year. That would be enough to turn those assets into liabilities, because the problem with monetizing land is that money is a very, very free, fluid asset that can travel very great speeds and can change its value very rapidly. Land, on the other hand, is a very fixed asset. You can't live off the bricks. It's not fungible. And therefore, trying to put a monetary value, if you take as our assumption that markets are conversations, as I've been saying before, it's a quote from the Clue Train Manifesto. And what we're trying to do here with these markets is we're trying to communicate with about 2 letters in the alphabet. We can't really communicate what we say because a group of people have decided that exchange value as a price signal is the only method of communication, when actually what the internet has said is no, we can communicate all kinds of nuanced, complex communication across the world. Reputation is now wealth. You get people doing reviews and ratings online. It's all about how many clicks, how much attention. You've got something called the attention economy now. So you've got all these other means of communication. When it comes to taking surplus capital and matching it with unmet needs, like I've got something to give at the same time that you need it, it's no skin off my nose, or maybe it is and we can work out a financial compensation. When you look at the economy in those terms as a form of communication, and economics as a study of human action rather than consumption and figures and charts, you start to realize this is a really primitive way of running a civilization. A bunch of men in suits in air-conditioned buildings trying to make numbers get bigger on a screen. Doesn't sound very, I don't know, like a good idea.
And that's why democracy has turned into fascism, the marriage of the state with corporations. And it's all to influence the lesser educated general public to be, believe all this crap that they're spewing.
Yes, education was key, Plato said, to combating apathy. And what if I told you it is okay to change your opinion based on new information? Is something everyone should repeat to themselves. I'd also like everyone to start repeating the phrase, I don't know, because I don't hear enough people saying, like, actually, that's interesting, can I get back to you on that? Rather, what we see is people lurching for political tropes and parties like libertarian. Now, this is Jamie Bartlett, who I mentioned earlier, who said to me that, let me see if I can find his, I won't be able to find his response now because it'll be buried somewhere. But he was the guy that was...
that there's people that refuse to answer a question or say that it's a stupid question. If it's a stupid question, it should be easy to answer.
Right. Yes. So Jamie seems like a really nice guy, by the way. He's got a book.
And it's not me.
Yes, Jamie Bartlett. He was featured at the end of the piece. He sounds like he's really clued up. I haven't read his book yet, and I'm not here to plug his book. Obviously, you can see it on the screen there. It's up to you to go and buy it. I'm not endorsing it. He was the guy they got the soundbite from at the end, where it was like, these are a bunch of libertarian extremists, and if they're not careful, they're going to lose public opinion. Of course, the underlying assumption there is that we're not members of the public, and our opinion, isn't part of that discourse. But he was like, well, look, and I don't want to pick on him too much. He does seem like a really smart guy, and I do respect him. But he's like, by falling back on labels, Jamie Bartlett does himself a disservice. If this topic is as important as he makes out, it deserves more time. And he says that you'll find pages of nuance in my book, but the Dark Wallet Project is extreme libertarianism anyway. So it's like, yeah, if you want nuance, buy my book for $10. And it's like, no, you can't start putting a price on education. If you start doing that, you turn it into an economic decision. And that's when you end up with stuff like this, where actually you've got a very intelligent argument that says there's no such thing as Bitcoin taint, because these are just a bunch of random numbers. This is something I tried to bring up in the conversation, the distinction between pseudonymity and anonymity. And Peter Todd said, well, I don't think that's a very good argument. You can't make a bright line distinction, which was also my argument. But it is important to make this distinction. Okay, if I'm in a crowd of people that's being surveilled and we're all wearing the same thing, I am anonymous, but I'm not private. But if I'm sat inside of my own room on my own and there's nothing there to watch me, I'm private, but not necessarily anonymous. That's the distinction, and it's an important one. So I respectfully disagree with Peter Todd on this issue. I do think there is a distinction that we can make on a case-by-case basis between anonymity and pseudonymity. Bitcoin does not give you full anonymity. It gives you pseudonymity as long as you take precautions, as long as you use Tor, as long as you don't register an online wallet with an email address or anything that could signal your identity. The argument here from Trilemma is that we don't have any such thing as Bitcoin taint, because these are just a bunch of random numbers anyway, and all you can get is a suspicion from an investigator's point of view. So someone investigating a crime, looking at the blockchain, he said, you'll never find anything intelligible, and the best you're going to be able to do is build a suspicion. The problem with that argument is that we're not dealing with a closed-loop system. Investigators won't just be using the blockchain. They'll also be using seized servers from exchanges. They will be using CCTV records. They'll be tracking your mobile. And once you consolidate data, its utility rises exponentially. So just looking at your emails is one thing, but looking at your emails along with your web searches, wow, that's powerful. Now you've got more. Then combining all of that with your whereabouts and where you go day to day, that's why a lot of these tech startups, these social networking startups, raise so much capital. It's because the speculation is that you've got data, and that data can be sold and is oil.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Dark wallet. Hold on, come right back to me. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Chris, with our QR codes up here in the corner, it would be pretty hard denying that that Bitcoin address does not belong to us.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I think, Chris, you've got to be careful. That Trilemma guy is a troll, and we all know what trolls are like. If you all remember the "It's over 9,000" meme, where somebody trolled on Oprah Winfrey's forum something pretty awful involving over 9,000, and she took it seriously. And of course, the troll wasn't being serious. And I think this Trilemma guy, might be playing a little bit. Of course, there's such a thing as Bitcoin taint. What taint does is it shows you a likely probability of a connection between, payments and addresses, and using that, you could then, using detective work, you could then follow likely leads. And as was pointed out, that QR code up there, I mean, it would be very difficult for anyone to deny that that belongs to you, right? Mm-hmm. So, and so using normal investigatory procedures, we could then link that address to you, and payments could be then traced like that. So taint exists, To suggest that taint means that, likely probability of connections. That's what it means.
Yeah, and actually,
but I think,
go on.
Yeah, I think when it comes to court of law, it will be interesting to see how that turns out, because if you have $100 in your account, you send it to another account, and that account uses 50 of that dollars for drugs or whatever, or something illegal, is that really prove that you sent them that $100 for the intention of that $50 to be spent on something illegal? But,
well, listen, the thing is that digital signatures are recognized in law, and all that a Bitcoin payment is, Bitcoin itself, I mean, you can argue, truthfully, Bitcoin, there's no such thing as Bitcoins. Bitcoin isn't money. The Bitcoin blockchain is simply proof of publication. And what you're proving the publication of are digitally signed messages. And, if you can interpret that as financial transactions, then fine. I mean, whatever you interpret them is fine, but Bitcoin itself isn't money, right? So if you take that view, it's proof of publication only. The problem is, you try arguing in a court that Bitcoin isn't money, and I think you'll have a pretty hard time. I mean, Ross Ulbricht tried that already, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Well, the thing is that anything can be money. It's a question of confidence, and it's a question of getting everyone to agree that something has value. I mean, the reason why I gave that trilemma guy some airtime is because it was brought up by a non-troll, Daniel P. Barron, who I've been checking out, and he seems like a decent enough guy. So I thought I would address it, albeit briefly.
People use matchsticks or poker chips to represent money when they're playing cards or things like that. I mean, they use cigarettes in prison or whatever. But
yeah, it's a way people get to agree on value, right? Money is just an agreement that people make between people on what is value, and that's why this notion of speech came up, and it's why I brought up this line of questioning around, well, what is speech becoming? What was it when we first decided to frame our civilization on it, and what is it becoming now? And given that it's changing, do we need to reassess the foundations of our civilization?
Well, as far as the NSA goes, too, they were using 3 degrees of separation on metadata. So if you use Bitcoin on your phone, that would be metadata. And I'm assuming it would be metadata on your computer as well. So they would be using 3 degrees of separation on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
What I think it's kind of ties into that and goes back to what you were saying, and also the Ross Ulbricht case is is parallel construction was something that NSA and DEA has been working on together, probably illegally, and so that kind of ties into that. They can look at something on the blockchain, even if it doesn't prove it, in court. They can then use that to build a case behind the scenes. So that's why things like dark wallet, I think, are important.
I can guarantee you, if someone made a payment from an address which could be proved to be theirs, and they did something like, order a murder, or paid for something nefarious like that, then that would be enough to get a conviction in court. That's absolutely for sure.
Well, if there's an intermediate address, and that address is getting Bitcoin from all different places, not just your one address.
Yeah, and this is why CoinJoin is really important, because CoinJoin is really important, because what you would then be doing is changing the network effect that all payments are mixed. Therefore, it becomes much harder to to tie up the taint. But bear in mind, it's not just about how. It's not just about the direction of payments that I'm paying from one address to another. It's also things like timing, amounts. Then, I mean, there was, I think, Pinkcoin or something. One of these coins released a video once showing the wonderfully anonymous system, and a friend of mine asked me to comment on it. And I was, within literally about 30 seconds, I was able to identify the source address, because, basically they would send a payment, and the very next block it would appear from another address. So obviously they were sending to a mixer, and then sending from a fresh address. But you could tell by the timing, it was always one block apart. You understand? So, I mean, if I sent you, 1.2345 bitcoins, to a mixer, and then the mixer sent out 1.2345 bitcoins out to another address, you could then, reasonably say that they were connected.
Yeah, I think blockchain.info's version of CoinJoin had a little issue with that. At least I was reading on Reddit. I didn't go through and confirm that.
Yeah, I believe it still has.
Yeah, it has some.
Christoph
found some. He audited it or something, and he found a small issue with it. But I just wanted to say, well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if any of us are, but I mean, I think that's really interesting what you were saying, that it has to do with more than one factor besides the address. It has to do with the timing and a lot of other things, of course. But what I was thinking is that it's also going to come down to perhaps if you can prove that you had control of that private key that matches that address. Because I could always say, yeah, but I didn't have control. Someone stole, someone hacked into my account or stole my private key, and they ordered the hitman, and I didn't do it, So, I mean, they're going to have to somehow, it seems to me, you're going to have to somehow prove that they actually signed, I mean, that they were the person that had control of that private key that belonged to those funds.
Sure, so that's called plausible deniability, and
right.
You have to have the right.
Come up with that, though. And the problem is getting a jury or whoever's convicting you to believe that and allow it in court.
Right.
Nowadays, the courts are allowing less and less plausible deniability or reasonable doubt. I mean, there was plenty of reasonable doubt that Ross Ulbricht has that they've laid out there, and they're just not having any of it.
Well, that's even a bigger reason why we have to really take care of our how we're storing our coins. Because I mean, theoretically, if I was a real evil person, then not only would I steal your coins, but I would use them for something criminal too. And then if someone knew that was your address, that would be really bad. So if I'm the government, then I hack into your computer, and then I use some coins from your address to buy a kilo of cocaine or something, and then the cops come knocking on your door. I mean, that's really conspiracy theory style. Of course, that's a worst case, but I think that...
Wait, didn't they do that? Didn't the U.S. Marshal Service steal some coins that weren't theirs, sell them, and then now isn't that money in the Treasury Department being used to bomb the shit out of Syria?
Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of crazy stories. There's recently a story that I saw, but I haven't investigated the sources, but apparently a big plane, a CIA plane crashed, and they crashed somewhere in South America, and yeah, the first responders on the scene just found kilo after kilo of cocaine, apparently. But like I said, I don't have the link, and I didn't investigate it, but of course there's stories like that. I was just thinking about what do you call it, plausible deniability and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, I think it's also like I think the point is that you can obscure your transactions, but it's not 100%. You know what I mean? Theoretically, if I had a really powerful computer and I was really clever, then somehow maybe I could go back through all this, even if it went through a CoinJoin. I mean, maybe CoinJoin will develop to even be better than it is now, but you can obscure it enough that it's just going to be a bunch of garbage. I mean, it's the same. I don't know if it's comparable to like a shredder that shreds it just into so many pieces, but I mean, if you were really, and then mixes it with a bunch of other pieces of paper, but I mean, eventually you're going to get a powerful enough computer that could perhaps, make some sense out of all of it.
Well, I would like to invite our audience, if you want to taint your Bitcoin address with this show, you can do so by donating to this address. Now, this address is a special address just for the BBC Bias project that we're running at the moment. A lot of time and energy has been put into it by numerous people, not just me. Sumitra right now, as I mentioned, is painstakingly going through putting the captions. I wish that we were, better staffed here at the World Crypto Network, but you can join us probably tomorrow evening will be our next town hall meeting, which we do hold in public. So please donate to the cause. We've been noticing more donations coming in. I'm really, really grateful to whoever it was that sent me 0.25 Bitcoin the other day. That was very generous, and that's helping me pay for my travel, and hopefully I can get better microphones and things as well. I need to properly strategize. That's one of our real Achilles heel on the network here, is that we don't have good quality sound. So I really want to get that to improve. So just quickly, we've had some comments by Ajan. Let me just pull that down. And he is saying that, why would ISIS need such a document in the English language? Why is it even in English? Why isn't it in Arabic? That's a good point. And then he's also made a comment at 4 minutes 12 where he says, Jen, I guess some of the criminals now are becoming very extreme, and we're seeing much more movement towards people who can act almost on the same level as the state. Yes. Is Jen saying that the state's behavior is criminal? Actually, Jen does mention that in her defense. She says, look, now anyone can be their own state, and you can fundraise, and should we perhaps ease off some of this technical development until we've worked out what the implications of that might be? Sovereign self, the sovereign of the self.
Absolutely not, is the answer. We should not ease off on the technology.
Not anybody can be their own state, because in the eyes of most people, we're still held accountable for our individual actions. And if I go bomb somebody or murder somebody, I'm going to be held accountable by society.
Yeah. I would say that maybe not yet, but we are moving in that way. I mean, if you think about democracy itself, you know, the idea of democracy anyway is decentralization of government, is individual people being able to vote, make their own decisions. Of course, there's elements of centralization in our democracy because our democratic republic was made, you know, hundreds of years ago. But then we have the internet, which decentralized communication. Now Bitcoin decentralized in money. I think that there's going to be more decentralization in ways we can't even imagine right now, and hopefully that will allow more self-determination, perhaps even to the point where you could be called your own state. But I think that is probably far off into the future.
Okay, well, moving on. Like I said, we don't do concision on this show. I really, really meant it. I'll just reiterate, again, if you want to look more into this philosophical discussion, it was very well explored in the 20th century, not starting with Philippa Foot. She kind of came in halfway through, but she proposed the trolley problem, which is a thought experiment of like what you should do in a moment of crisis. Let's say a trolley or a train, it's called trolleys in America, is going down a track, and you can either save 5 people on one train or sacrifice, you know, 1 person on another train. Would you save the many and sacrifice the few? It's a very, very dense topic. You certainly can't push it into a 3-minute segment on a light entertainment broadcast like BBC Click. So I'm going to leave it there. And now I'm going to move to this very well-established publication called Cointelegraph. And my first question, rather than going into Butterfly Labs, is how do you guys produce these wonderful graphics up the top here, Ian? I think that's way more important than exploring fraud in the Bitcoin scene.
Yeah, those graphics have been great for us. I think grabbing attention and stuff. We have a couple artists. We're working on a new artist page because the artist page we have just mentions 1, but I believe we have 3 artists working for us now, and they just, you know, I tell them, well, I work specifically with the one who did that, which was Jing Jin, who jingjinart.com. You know, when I'm start my article, I just give her the basic idea. She starts on it. I figure out the title. I give it to her, and hopefully it gets out quickly. Sometimes, you know, it makes it so we're a little slower than the other publications, but I think it's been worth it with how well people respond to the art, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to Adam Levine the other day, and one of the nice things about this industry is the way we all work together. And like at this network, we don't aim to do the kind of content delivery that you guys do, where, as you say, you take a bit more time. Like what we do is we go straight on air as the news is breaking. We distill it all down. It's very, very hard work. You know, I read I've estimated about 500,000 words a week, mostly on this topic, going through Reddit posts, going through forums, going into the chat rooms, and then we have to try and help people discover the news as it's unfolding. And that suits the World Crypto Network really well. But then obviously you've got people like Adam Levine, who's very good at doing those long kind of very high production value podcasts where the sound quality is always very good. He edits it very well. He's also quite a good moral person, so he eases back on the advertising, and he doesn't kind of lay into that too much. And then you guys, I think you've done a great job for the industry. I'm not just saying that. I think you've done a great job for the industry in helping to raise awareness and get people's attention in a way that isn't link bait, isn't like patronizing the user, not bombarding people with lots of noise. It's actually, these are really nice graphics that convey the story really well. And we're going to start by talking talking about. This will be the second issue of this show. Butterfly Labs, yet another fraudulent organization, has been brought down in just the way it should be. Or has it? Because one of the comments we've had is, oh look, government works, Jamie Nelson. This is regulation and it's working, the FTC.
Well, my take on that is they had it coming, but I don't know that government is working. How long did it take?
Are people still ordering stuff from them? I just don't get it. I mean,
Right.
they're so notorious for, I mean, that's like, buying Mt. Gox bitcoins from someone hoping that they won't crash. You know what I mean? I mean, what the hell? Okay, that was different because you could get them for a really cheap spread. I mean, that was a totally different game a little bit. But I mean, this whole thing about getting your miners on time and if they're going to perform as advertised, that's also it's a type of speculation that a lot of the miners are doing, and they're hoping that they get theirs before the other people. And I'm surprised people are still ordering from them because they had such a horrible reputation. That's what I don't get.
Well, they're not ordering from now because now their assets are frozen.
Yeah,
But,
well,
yeah, it is surprising. I've never talked to a Bitcoin miner who used Butterfly Labs and was satisfied. Like, the only good stories I hear about Butterfly Labs are, I almost ordered from them but decided not to at the last minute. Like, that's the only good story I ever hear about Butterfly Labs. Yeah, as far as it being regulation, I don't know if there's regulation and there's criminal conduct, right? And telling your customers that your machines are going to do this one thing, that they're going to come at a certain time, they're going to give you a certain return on your investment, and then not providing that, and like possibly, there's lots of rumors, unsubstantiated rumors that they were mining with people's hardware, stuff like that. Hopefully the FTC finds the bottom of that. But if those are true, then I mean, there's no doubt that I don't even think it's regulation. I think it's more just criminal law at that point.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds more like it's just straight up fraud, or it's not a regulation issue.
I think the evidence that they were mining on equipment is is pretty strong. I mean, anyone who plays with hardware knows if you leave a device on 24 hours a day, then it builds up a kind of dust residue that you can't really get rid of, and it gets into everything. And of course, people have been opening up the machines and finding that they have this dust residue. So that can only be, if it's new and in a box, even if it's kind of an open box, the dust isn't going to get in the machine. You're not
isn't
going to have
that for testing? That's just testing.
Yeah, for a month or two, right? Yeah.
They're just testing it.
I mean, there were even, I suppose you have to say now, unsubstantiated allegations on Bitcoin Talk a long time ago that in the very beginning, when they said that the machine, they were still under research and development, there were some people buying mini rigs, these $30,000, dollar at the time mini computers, and getting, literally driving into the back door and paying couple of $100,000 in cash and getting these machines ahead of time. These kind of reports were being leaked last year. It's been nothing but, I mean, you also remember, I don't know if any of you saw, there was a Reddit post at some point where there was a loophole where people were able to get refunds from PayPal by emailing the CEO directly. And I think PayPal refunded about $300,000 before they stopped doing it. Now that was pretty special because the rules for PayPal are, and I think it's the FTC's rules as well, that if you take payment for something, you've got to deliver within 30 days. There's no such thing as, you're not allowed to take pre-sale things and wait for months. And so the terms and conditions to sell on PayPal is you have to deliver within 30 days. And of course, several months go by. Well, of course, PayPal's dispute resolution, you're not allowed to file a complaint at the time, they've changed it now, after 60 days. So people waiting 4 months later, they've got no way to even claim non-delivery to get the money back from PayPal. And PayPal are actually refunding people's money. So that's a clear indication that, even PayPal were aware that, there were shenanigans going on.
But there are two things here, aren't there? One is the fact that people are using these pre-sales as a way of bootstrapping, and this goes back to the lending issue that we've got in the macroeconomy as a whole. That's what all this money printing is about, is that we can't get to the future that we all want without some liquidity up front. And then the second issue is this counterparty issue. I thought we were trying to create trustless systems with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, where we didn't need to rely on that kind of advocacy, because at the end of the day, what's motivating PayPal to get involved there is a branding issue, a marketing issue. They want to look good. In fact, they don't want to look like they're letting customers down, and that can lead to unfair decisions being made. Maybe not in this case, but in general.
I think there's a very interesting thing. I mean, when I launched Viacoin, I was very careful to understate everything, even though, you know, and not hype things, because.
But you're not now.
Not now, not at all. And this strategy worked really well, because even if you know everything's, you've got all your ducks lined up in a row, things can go wrong. Things happen, and or you make little mistakes, and that can throw back your timeline. So if you've kind of promised the moon, and then something happens and you can't deliver it, then you look terrible and people get angry. But if you underpromise, and then over-deliver, then you say it's going to take a week, even though it's ready for tomorrow. Right? And then if it works out, and then tomorrow you can say, look, here, it's ready. Then people, it works a lot better. It's nice for the market. It makes you look good, and it protects you against the random going wrongs. And the fact is that ASIC development is a very, very laborious process, and there are things which are out of your control. So, for example, foundries. If you've booked your time to get stuff made in a foundry, and then a big company comes along like AMD or something, and they want stuff built, then they're gonna jump ahead of you in the queue. And so, even though you've done everything right, then there are things that can go wrong, and that seems to be the mistake that most ASIC manufacturers have made. So, I mean, maybe in some cases, I don't believe for Butterfly Labs. I actually do believe that there's malicious fraud going on there personally. But I think some companies have just genuinely not understood the difficulties that they can experience, and they got caught up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I would also agree that with the Butterfly Labs, it seems more extreme to the point of criminal, but in general, you are right. Like, I used to report on the Chinese tech scene, Chinese phones and stuff like that, and there's a new company, OnePlus, with their new phone, and they had the same problem of just overpromising and taking too long. And so I mean, my point is just that that's pretty common, not just in the Bitcoin scene, but also just in tech in general. That it's hard sometimes to deliver very specific and very new products.
Yeah, because it relies on other people estimating ahead of time what the potential of that product is, and the managerial execution on how well they're going to deliver it, because anyone can come up with an idea, and often ideas come in waves. But the question is, who's the right person to bring it to the market? Who can address the market in the largest scalable way, and who can deliver the quality? And one of the allegations that came up here, someone I think linked to your article, oh no, sorry, this is just a self article on Bitcoin, where it appears that so this is a quote from Butterfly Labs in response to them being shut down by the FTC and put into receivership. It appears that the FTC has decided to go to war with Bitcoin overall. How fucking disappointing is that? And you quote it well in your piece as well. Like, they're now trying to say that this is like the government versus Bitcoin, whereas the FTC made quite clear. Check out this guy. I'll put this in the comments by a guy called Aaron, who made a really good story. Here you go, Participatory Journalism in Action, where he lists I think it's all of the questions that were asked on Butterfly Labs on hashtag AskFTC, which is like their FTC's social media drive. And so this was kind of brought up where actually there are suspicions already on one of the members of staff, to do with fraud. And how bad is it that Butterfly Labs, a bit like this is just like Gox, isn't it? They're just trying to pin it all on this is, we're just taking a hit for the team. and all this kind of shit. And that's what really smacks of bad malpractice to me.
Well, I think they're trying to, you know, get the Bitcoin community on their side, but that's failed. You know, that boat has sailed a long time ago. I think they're going to find that no one's going to be coming to their rescue.
Yeah, I think anybody that's been in the Bitcoin space for more than a month has heard the tale of bad shit coming out of anything to do with Butterfly Labs.
I'm just trying to look for the latest hash rate, because we've had a massive drop in the hash rate recently. Let me just let's go Bitcoin difficulty. Let's take a look. So the hash rate has been rising quite rapidly of late. You see this massive jump here that we were documenting on the network as it was kind of happening. But then recently we saw a massive downtrend in the price of gigahash with Nick's gone, but we've been saying that now we might be approaching, and this is not a recommendation, and you please don't trade on any of this, but now is actually going to be a good time to buy the gigahashes just when everyone is getting out of the market. Historically, the best time to buy is when everyone is selling.
Buy low, sell high.
Yeah. And so just when it's unpopular, and obviously if everyone did this, it would stop, you know, it wouldn't work anymore. But for me, like, the hash rate is integral. Like, the hash rate is everything. If you don't have hash rate on a cryptocurrency network, you don't have a currency at all. You don't have proof of publication. You don't have anything. And so it really is the backbone. And when you buy a miner, you are backing the network. And I think companies like Butterfly Labs are just playing middleman. They're just saying, oh, look, there's a big trend. See the Google search. You can go to Google, trends.google.com. You can look up how many people are looking up Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining was the most popular double keyword search term with Bitcoin in it. It wasn't that people were looking up Bitcoin. They were looking up Bitcoin mining because they saw an opportunity to make money. Of course, if they'd done another maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes of research, they would have worked out that mining is a zero-sum game. It's meant to be marginally profitable at best, and the average miner stands to lose the equivalent of their expenses incurred in the operation. So most miners aren't going to make money. And in fact, back in April 2013, even if you'd bought at the high, even if you'd bought upwards of $230, you still would be net double your money than if you'd bought a Bitcoin miner at the time. Right, just by using the same dollars to buy the Bitcoins.
The only way you're going to make a lot of money doing it is if you're really clever reselling all of your mining equipment, and if you're able to find, and that's also a really fucked up game, because you're selling it at really high prices on eBay to total newbies that have no idea this is a totally inefficient, unprofitable machine. You're selling this thing that you bought on Bitcoin Talk for the equivalent of $20 on Bitcoin Talk and Bitcoin, and you resell it for $50 on eBay, and then you use that $50 to buy the newest miner that's way more efficient than all the shit, you know, all the people that are, you know, dumb enough to buy your stuff are mining on this totally inefficient mining gear,
Walmart?
and you order the new stuff. That's basically how it works. A lot of the miners that are really going to make any money are really good at turning over their mining equipment right on time. It's so extreme that people order stuff, and they already, before it even arrives, they're already reselling it. They're already putting an ad somewhere. Okay, we've got these for sale, you know, in hand, or whatever. That just means they just ordered it, and it's like, you know, about to be on their doorstep.
You're flipping. It's called flipping. Yeah, you're flipping it. You're just buying it on a purely speculative wave.
I thought you meant my screen was flipping. Oh, no. Yeah, sure. You're flipping it, and you have to be able to flip it fast. And so I've even talked recently to some people that are in really big mining operations, because I was thinking, how the hell do you make any profit? Is the electricity here cheap enough? I mean, it wasn't in Germany, it was somewhere else, but is it really cheap enough? They said, well, it's okay. And they said, actually, as soon as before the miners even arrive, they're already trying to resell them. You know, it's that short of a time span in order to get a profit out of all this. Show us, Chris. What do you have?
So this is the recent massive drop in the value of gigahashes, which was not, as would normally be the case, a precursor of the difficulty adjustment. This was because the price drop, this here, oh no, is it that one? Yeah, I think it's that one. No, sorry, this one here, which was back on, oh, I don't know, I'm getting lost with all the dates. But anyway, it happened because the price dropped of Bitcoin and people's confidence in the gigahash just went through the floor. So now we've now got this waterfall pattern. This has got a name in Chartism, but I forget what it's called. It's where it just goes down like a cascading waterfall and it never stops, basically, or eventually it will, but for a long time it just goes on forever. And this is called knife catching. Catching a knife on the markets is a very, very hard thing to do. I'm not endorsing it on this show, but if you do, if one were to have an appetite for risk, this would be a prime time to do it, because the not only is the price dropping, but all the buy orders are dropping on Sexio as well. We've gone from, I've been charting it, I've been taking screen grabs, and we used to have a thickness of about 500 to 600 Bitcoin buy orders on Sexio, the total net buys, and now it's gone down to something like 200. So it's dropped by a factor of 3, and that's significant. That means that confidence in the market is waning. That means that you can, what one could, and this is not an endorsement, one could start to scale in their investment. One could start to buy in slowly, not all in one lump sum, but as each time the price, one could just keep scaling in more. And that could be, you know, now that everyone, you know, because you don't go shopping looking to be ripped off, right? You go shopping looking for a bargain, and that's how it should be when people, I'm not against people managing their risk in relation to the world around them. We live in a dynamically shifting environment. It's completely appropriate that people take long-term investment view, you know, perspectives, and say, for example, like I'd really like to be able to buy oil, right, buy CFDs in oil, because if I'm driving a lot, I want to hedge against the cost of fuel going up. So I take a position in oil to hedge against the rising fuel cost. The problem that we have in this so-called Western capitalist democracy is that it's capitalism for one group of people, socialism for, you know, the rich, socialism for the rich, capitalism for everyone else. But the problem is that you've got a whole bunch of middle-class people right now being forced into unhedged risk, i.e. with their houses, which they're being ripped off for. They're putting all of their eggs into one basket. It's not a diverse investment. And actually, what Bitcoin signals to me, and people on the other side of this debate have said, well, look, you can't take a hedged position in Bitcoin, because what would you buy on the opposite end of Bitcoin? What would be the counterbalance? The problem I think people are having in the Bitcoin space is they do want to diversify, but they only want to diversify within the Bitcoin ecosystem, within the cryptocurrency ecosystem. So they buy into Bitcoin, and then they start buying into Litecoin and other altcoins, or Viacoin and Ethereum and all these other stocks, on crypto stocks, things like that, because they do want to diversify. They just don't want to go via fiat and the traditional banking system in order to do that. And that's what's causing these liquidity traps. That's what's causing people to come up short, is that there's so much friction getting back into fiat, and then when the price drops, everyone tries to get out because everyone rushes for the door at the same time.
There's so many other ways to diversify besides staying in crypto, and you don't have to just, you know, hold dollars or pounds. I mean, you could buy metals with your crypto coins. You could buy, you could just buy a gift, one of those gift cards, GYFT, and then, okay, so let's say in August I saw the downtrend start, and it was at it broke 500, and I was like, oh shit, it's gonna go down a lot. Well, I'll just buy you know, a Bitcoin's worth of Target gift cards and use that to buy food and whatever, and then I've you know, I've made a good buy then, because now the price of I mean, I'm not going to use that to go back into Bitcoin. I mean, I could resell it, but I've diversified and I've used it for, I've at least used it for something useful. Or you could buy gold, silver, or copper with your crypto coins, and you could just hold it, you know, under your bed or wherever you want to, or bury it in your backyard or wherever you want to put it, and then you've also diversified, and you're in a totally different market than the crypto world. I mean, this whole crypto world market could just totally collapse. We have to be realistic here. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's really dangerous to go all in in crypto. I mean, I think that's ridiculous. You have to have other stuff besides that. You know what I mean? It's too big of a risk to only have gigahash Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin and Feathercoin and Litecoin and Darkcoin and whatever. I mean, that's just one thing. We don't know what's going to happen. And so you're going to need other stuff. You're going to need some hammers and screwdrivers and all that kind of stuff too. So
and food and water. And Nick has said before on the show.
Yeah, food and water. I mean, we'll get into survival. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to need that. And actually, Nick speculated that you'd be the two assets he recommends is alcohol and toilet paper. Like if the shit hits the fan, people will want to buy alcohol and they will need toilet paper.
Yeah, I mean that's a we could go on to that tangent a little bit. I don't know if it fits in the show, but that's also a discussion. It depends on how bad the shit hits the fan, how much you're going to really want to barter. Because if you start bartering with people, then you show them how strong you are. So you have to be careful who you barter with. So if I go over to someone and they say, okay, I need medicine, then you know, well, that group is weak because they're ill, and I want to stay away from them, or I want to attack them because they're weak. So you have to be careful about bartering and all that. But he's basically right. If you were going to have some things to barter, you need like those little bottles of alcohol you get on the airplane. Mm-hmm. Those are really nice to trade out. You don't want a whole big bottle. That's not very fungible, you know? You want like cigarettes or self-rolled cigarettes are really good. Chocolate, sugar, you know, that's great. People would go nuts. Imagine if it was like 2 weeks with no electricity and you're like, okay, I've got chocolate and I want a can of beans. People would go nuts. They would just like, you know, they would go for riot over chocolate probably, or coffee or something, you know. But I mean, yeah. So and anyway, you could, if you had cold storage, then you'd be fine. And then when power went back on, we had internet again. Then you'd still have your coins. But I mean, so we need to have more.
This is the danger, though, is that we're losing. The internet is very centralized from a hardware standpoint, and a lot of people underestimate that because their only experience of the internet is they're staring at this screen and this box, and it appears to be private because no one else is physically around them. But as the BBC Horizon showed in their documentation of the dark web, was that actually most of the UK's traffic goes through a single pinch point in the Docklands, and GCHQ monitor all the traffic. There is also another pipeline that goes via Leeds in the UK, but there's one main one, so most of your traffic is being monitored at that pinch point.
Yeah, here we got everything from Minneapolis to Chicago runs right along outside the main highway out here. So, and then it branches off to the universities in the area. So if somebody could just go out there with a shovel, basically, and a pickaxe and cut the cable and cut off internet to between Chicago and Minneapolis, now it would route up through Winnipeg and go around that way, but it would be a major disruption in internet traffic. So there's
don't give the terrorists ideas. You're giving the terrorists ideas. Don't give the terrorists ideas.
This isn't something I'm going to do, but
I know. I'm just joking. But yeah, that's right. And we talked about it on Twitter. Is that you can't just, or I think in almost all countries, you can't just start an ISP. It's totally regulated. It's totally illegal. There's no alternative. You know, I mean, we can experiment with these mesh networks and stuff, but I mean, there is no, you can't just start one. It's all highly regulated.
Right, and you know, that's the whole idea of the internet, was we wanted it to be a mesh network, and right now we're relying on these cables in the ground, and to go overseas, it's cables buried underneath the ocean. But from the United States to England, there's basically one great big cable that's, you know, it's...
A lot of it's owned by Google as well.
Yeah, it's 6 feet across, and there's some stuff that goes over satellite, but when you run internet and data over satellite, it has a 1 second delay because of the latency, because it goes 25,000 miles up, then it goes 25,000 miles down to the other computer, then it goes 25,000 miles up again and 25,000 miles back down again. So it's got a 100,000-mile round trip for that signal where it's going through the satellite, whereas you don't have as much delay when it's traveling near the speed of light going on the cables.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, this is my fault. I've ended up taking us on a tangent.
Sorry.
So that was totally me. I did that, and it's a very interesting topic all unto itself. But just in the last sort of 15 minutes or so of the show, because that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. Concision. So this Section 5A of the FTC Act, pulling down yet another fraudulent operation. You brought up the issue of regulation there in our discussion of the centralization of the internet itself. Now that we do have this Wild West and this brave new world of Bitcoin, and I guess as we've been saying, it's proof of publication. Bitcoin is a form of speech. It's a way of bringing a sense or a witnessing of actions that occur outside of our field of view. Right, outside things that happen far, far away from me, I can now independently verify the existence of that event. And this is just the beginning. But now that you do have this unregulated market where all you need to do is download an open source piece of software that builds on what's known as open standards over many years. Open standards mean everyone gets together, they agree on like how this should be done. This is how we should encode things through TCP, and this is how we should encode a blockchain. And then eventually what emerges is best practice. And de facto, the network creates what's known as the network effect. As a result, anyone can now enter the market, anyone can participate, but also as a result, you do get people that come in and start to abuse it. And I guess the argument against the anarchist notion of, you know, let everyone police themselves and let's not have any rulers, or at least everyone can be their own ruler, is that then we do end up relying, or so far have had to rely on government regulators to shut down some of these businesses. You see, that would be the argument against, Jamie, is you can talk about these, you know, anarchist ideals, and let's just bring it back a little bit to what the BBC were trying to say, where you've got these libertarian extremists. That's what they're going to argue. They're going to say, look, you guys, you love your anarchy and your liberty, but then you always come running back to daddy.
No, we don't. I haven't called the cops on anybody. The problem is these monopolies and stuff that we normally bitch about are created by government. So to say that we keep coming back to daddy, so what you're saying is we need a group of nasty, evil bastards to protect us from this rare case of nasty, evil bastards that are going to cheat us. So we have a monopoly of force of people that rob us on a consistent basis through taxes and kill people to save us from this rare case of one company frauding a few people.
Well, to come back on that, I would say that they've received 300 complaints of people going back to daddy. If we say FTC as daddy, we've had 300 complaints directly, plus we reviewed thousands more from other sources. So somebody did, not necessarily libertarians, of course, but somebody did.
But so it's all right for 7 billion people to be extorted into paying taxes in all these wars around the world to justify protecting people from that?
Okay, sure. Let's distinguish the practice and the practitioner then. Okay, we can agree that our governments, the current incarnation of governing, is behaving in a nefarious way. Let's take that as our initial premise. But the actual act of enforcement, the need to go to someone stronger than you for protection against someone else that's abusing their power also, could we see a world where that becomes decentralized, where the FTC itself, you know, but then how are you going to give someone the right to come into your premises, shut you down, seize your papers? In an anarchist world, how do you achieve that?
Well, we don't have necessarily time to go into that here, but there's been a ton of stuff written on the subject, and there's plenty of internet videos on the subject on how to deal with those situations.
Okay, so one of the ones that I've heard, just briefly so that we can give people a signpost to it, is this idea of an open market for policing, that you would have private firms that would act as a kind of police force. There's question marks as to how they get their funding. Do they ask, like, all right, I'll investigate this, but only when you pay me? So there needs to be insurance.
DROs is what is most commonly accepted from people that I have listened to and know, which is a dispute resolution organization.
Mm-hmm.
And what they are is basically competing insurance companies, and where you have the option, you're not forced into it, and you can buy insurance from one of these competing companies, and somebody does you wrong, say Butterfly Labs or whatever, so you can just go to them and say, okay, this company ripped me off, or say, this guy hit my car. You go to that company and say, okay, this company did this to me. They go and work out with that company's or that individual's dispute resolution organization what to be done about the situation and what compensation should be done about.
So dispute resolution organization. Ian, do you want to come in?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I'm perhaps maybe less anarchist, maybe less libertarian than a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts. I would, I don't know Amir's personal beliefs, but I would disagree with the assessment from the BBC's and others that Dark Wallet in itself is libertarian. I would say that there's a lot of, like, Abby Hoffman of the Yippies would have loved to have the internet, would have loved to have something like the Dark Wallet. You know, there's a lot of, you know, there's a difference between, like, true anti-establishment liberals and maybe the liberals, as they like to call themselves, which are really just Democrats today. But also about your solutions to a decentralized, I guess, police force. I can't agree with that or disagree with that in more strong words. I mean, there was a time when the fire department was privatized, and you had to have a little thing on your house, and if your house was on fire and didn't have that thing, they would just stand there and they wouldn't put out your house unless you paid them. And that's not the kind of thing that, I mean, I'm all for small government, but there are some things like a police force, and trust me, I'm no friend of cops and no friend of everything that's been going on with police brutality, but I still think that is preferable to having Blackwater run our streets, and, you know, whoever has the highest bidder has control over the police force. I do not think that is a way we should kind of a road we should go down.
But isn't this to do with the time and the funding model? Like, you're still paying for, like, the NHS in this country is our National Health Service. It's an insurance company. In fact, you pay for the National Health Service and the hospitals here through something called national insurance contributions. And all the
same here. We don't get a choice of which insurance we get, though. We have Obamacare.
Yes.
We don't get to choose Reagan Care or Jamie Care. We have fucking Obamacare. That's our only choice.
Let me just, I just want to make this point about the time and the opportunity cost, because what the NHS, the underlying assumption was we all face the same risk of health risks, right? It was a distributed phenomena, and therefore, if we all put the same amount into the coffers, then when you go to hospital, you don't have this painful decision you've got to make where I can't get treated for this desperate, you know, condition right now. Everyone gets paid for. The problem that causes is that some people take more than others. That leads to a sense of resentment, and the allegation against the accusations that we're facing at the moment is that de facto the NHS is being privatized because private companies are entering the market. Personally, I think we've got a good balance here in the UK. You've got Bupa, which is a not-for-profit healthcare company in the UK that offers private. A lot of the doctors that work for the NHS also work for Bupa, and it's one of the ways they can, you know, establish their income, because they wouldn't otherwise get paid enough on the NHS, and that gives everyone everyone the choice. And it's not as if Bupa, in my opinion anyway, is taking anything away from the NHS. If anything, they're adding to the progress of medical research, because if the people can afford it, look, if you want to go to Harley Street, a really nice West London hospital, and pay 10 grand a night or whatever it is that you pay, fine, you know, because then that money will get given to the researchers that are driving a lot of the innovation. In fact, we've had cases before where people in the UK have had to leave the UK to get treatment because they couldn't get it here on the NHS because it hadn't been approved by NICE, which is the regulatory body that assesses the cost-benefit ratio of whether or not that drug is worth it, because it costs £600 a tablet or something, but yet you've got these people that are desperate for treatment. And of course, you'll spend any amount of money to save your life. So really, it's just a time opportunity cost function in terms of the economics and the psychology. You're trying to take the money now where you're rational and you're calm and you're not desperate, rather than getting people to force the payment when they're not in a position to make a clear judgment about the value of what they're about to receive.
But taxes at its core is extortion. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that in its current incarnation, but what about the notion of insurance? Let's just talk about the concepts. I agree about the taxation and stuff like that, but do you think it's a good idea to take money up front in a cool, rational state of mind, rather than trying to charge at the point of use?
Yes.
And then next question would be, okay, the question against, by the way, in the UK that you often hear from the NHS advocates is that if you start distributing all these private companies, you start spreading things too thinly, and then you end up wanting to gravitate towards the insurance company that will insure, you know, that ends up serving most people. That forms an oligopoly, and then what you end up with, well, you don't get treated if you had a prior condition, and it leads to lack of consumer confidence. So how would you get around that issue? Like if you split it up between 4 or 5 companies, they end up forming oligopolistic, and then you'd be better off, I guess the argument would be you'd be better off with one big insurance company anyway.
Why should somebody else get to decide, I guess, is my question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what's interesting about the UK is I don't know many people that are unhappy, even on the right wing. The right wing, I hate those labels, but David Cameron is a right-wing politician and the leader of the Conservative Party, Prime Minister, and even he likes the NHS because he had a son that recently passed away, and it was the NHS that helped them, because the child had an illness that required constant medical care. He said, like, if we'd have gone private, it would have been a nightmare, the amount of paperwork. When you go into an NHS hospital in the UK, you're treated. There's no paperwork. No one asks you anything. You just go in, give them your date of birth. It doesn't even matter if you're not a native of this country. Even illegal immigrants, and this is another thing that comes up, get treated on the NHS because the doctors just want to do their job. They don't want to get bored. The Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. You don't want to be going up to someone and say, look, I'd really like to treat you. You're bleeding, like, systemically, but could you just fill out this form?
I have a friend that's from the UK that moved to Florida because he hated the healthcare system so bad over there. His wife had a cancer problem in her neck and had to wait over a year before they would do surgery on it. So he ended up opting to get the surgery done at a private place to save her life, and then said, fuck the UK, and moved to Florida.
Well, I mean, we could debate back and forth on healthcare. You know, that's a pretty long and, I don't know, pretty long subject. I would just like to go back to what I was talking about with the private contractors for law enforcement. I said it earlier than that when we were talking about Bitcoin or blockchain technologies replacing the government, and I indicate that I think that can happen down the line, which seems to contradict with what I said about the police force. I would say that, like, law enforcement has to be the last thing that the blockchain peels off from the government. When I was a little bit more libertarian before I even heard about Bitcoin, I think possibly before it even happened, I used to say that the only thing the federal government should do is secure our borders, print money, and fundamental human rights. Well, now Bitcoin made it so that they shouldn't be printing money. Like, I honestly believe that we should take care of money now. And so I think we can start peeling things off from the government, but I think the police force, fire department should probably be the last two things we try to figure out how to do that on the blockchain. Because the last thing I want is Blackwater or another mercenary group running around and forcing crimes to the highest bidder.
Yeah, it could create a misincentive or a bad incentive alignment if you end up with enforcement agencies and healthcare providers that are only motivated by monetary profit rather than profit as in progress in the round. What doctors are interested in is progress towards the health and safety of the population. The insurance company, as we saw with AIG, is interested in making numbers get bigger in databases, i.e. the monetary value, because that's your attention. You're just looking at numbers. You want the numbers to get bigger, but then that causes negative externalities on everyone else. So really you should be thinking, I conjecture you should be thinking that this is about pushing risk onto other people. How should the risk be divided up across the population? I could see a solution, an anarchist solution, whereby eventually, I love that, Ian, you're saying like the peeling away of government. We're stripping government slowly of its power, and we're working out ways of decentralizing it. I could see really good reputation systems emerging, where actually maybe this needs to be on an individual doctor-by-doctor basis, where doctors have reputations for being really good at treating certain illnesses, that could be decentralized through a reputation system in a blockchain-like technology, that they kind of earn these reputations over time. On the other side, you have some kind of distributed insurance business. I don't know how this would work at the moment, but you would then establish reputation systems so that you could get treated by the best doctor or the doctor that you were happy being treated by on an ad hoc basis, pro rata as time goes on, rather than trying to have one big lump sum payment that you make at the end of the tax year going to the centralized organization, which then becomes a hotbed of middlemen, which is what the NHS is now. It's a $100 billion industry that then lots of private firms then want to strip away all the profits from. And then we end up, at the moment, we're heading towards the worst of both worlds.
So you agree that what we have now is shit?
Oh yeah,
so
for sure.
You're opposed to giving something else a chance because it might turn into something bad?
No, sorry. So I think that in the UK we have the least worst of all possible worlds. So I don't think it's ideal. But like I said, even the right wing agree that the NHS is, very, very useful, and they're happy to use it themselves, you see, in practice. But where we're going at the moment, where you end up with this wishy-washy hybrid, where you've got this $100 billion healthcare system, and then all these private firms want to kind of gnaw away at that, all that does is leads to middlemen, it leads to inefficiencies in the market. I could almost, now I'm going back onto your side now, I could actually see, yeah, you could decentralize this, but do it in a really, really granular way, where you could do it on healthcare provider by healthcare provider basis, where healthcare providers could establish reputations for being good at treating certain things, but then you're going to need to come up with a way of decentralizing the insurance business, and I haven't heard a good enough explanation of that yet. But if you could decentralize the insurance,
I think our disagreement is on the transition period to getting rid of the systems. And I should probably be clear, I'm not saying we should get rid of all government tomorrow. There has to be a transition period. It would never work, but it would be pandemonium and chaos to just automatically, or just wake up tomorrow and have everything be gone as we know it. So there would have to be a transition period. I agree
and then
with
it becomes a question of what sequence of events does it need to give rise to in order to get from here to wherever it is we're going. And I think what's lacking at the moment from our argument on this side of the debate is, A, can we agree on some kind of destination, or not a final destination, but a better place to be than we are now? And can we then agree on what sequence of events has to take place in order for us to get there?
I wonder about your idea of decentralizing insurance companies. It's interesting. I wonder if any, like, there could be something done with like a giant multi-sig wallet or something with like 100 signatures or something like that. It's an interesting idea. I wonder if hopefully someone's working on that.
Well, what I'm thinking in my head is like what you'd have is an insurance contract, which would be a catch-all contract. It would have everything in the kitchen sink, and then you would pay for each item on that insurance. And yes, as you say, it would then have to go to a distributed multi-signature environment where you would almost be betting on your own chances of healthcare in the future, because that's all insurance is. It's the way we divide risk. It's a speculative investment. You're paying now so that in the future you don't have to make a decision later on.
Yeah, there's the BitNation is a thing that's coming out. Nathan Wozniak is one of the guys that's working with that, and I don't really know much about it. I think Cointelegraph did an article with him, or has one coming out. I'm Facebook friends with him, and he has his picture done up from Cointelegraph now. So
yeah, we did talk about BitNation a little bit, but I think they might have something bigger. I'm not sure coming up, but we did do an article on BitNation. I'm sure of that.
And Megan Lords has an interview with him tomorrow night on her channel, and then that'll be put on World Crypto Network. So I'm very interested in hearing what he has to say more about that. And they have a website too. I'm not sure what the thing is or what it's all about, but I'm really looking forward to that and finding out more about it. I think that will answer some of these questions they've thought of.
Well, that's great. Well, look, I mean, we could have done. We don't know how we got to Butterfly Labs to healthcare and insurance and distributed things, but I love the fact that these shows can meander. And I suppose I would say, in summary, it's now been 2 hours. That we have proved here, not only on this network but other YouTube channels, that we have kept our audience figures up. In fact, it's been getting higher. It started about 25, it's now at 38, it's been fluctuating around 40, and it just goes to show that people do have the attention span for this kind of nuanced, meandering conversation styles. Often we find people email in and they say, I have it on in the background and I tune in and out when I hear certain things. And so we're always looking for ways to improve. I would just finish up by saying that I think the most, as Peter Todd was saying in his interview, we have to defend Western democracy by going back to its principles and not give in to the extremists. Because if we start running with fallacious arguments like, what would you do if someone so-and-so got a nuclear bomb, you're just playing into the hands of ISIS themselves. This is exactly what they want us to do. They want us to start questioning our own values. And it takes courage. It takes courage to say the unpopular thing, even though you have the established facts on your side, to say the right thing even when everyone else is being brainwashed. So that's all we have time for this week, but please tune in again next time when we'll have, I have no idea who's going to be on because we literally make these things up as we go along, but later on today, this evening, we do have the Bitcoin Talk Show, so tune in for that, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.